The movie begins at a NASA conference chaired by Nathaniel Shepard, the CEO of Genesis, a space company. With great excitement, he announces the first mission to colonize Mars in search of resources and a possible home for the future of humanity. He then introduces the 6 astronauts, led by Sarah Elliott, who will become the first citizens of the Red Planet. Both the rocket launch and the docking with the space shuttle are a total success, bringing joy to the astronauts and NASA's ground team. However, 2 months into the journey, the first problem arises when Sarah discovers she's pregnant. Upon hearing this, NASA scientists suggest bringing Sarah back immediately, since carrying a baby under these conditions is uncharted territory. Nevertheless, Nathaniel allows the team to continue to Mars because the mission is too important. As soon as they arrive at their destination, the astronauts don't have time to explore. Instead, they perform an emergency delivery for Sarah, who gives birth to Gardner, a healthy baby boy. Unfortunately, Sarah begins to suffer convulsions due to eclampsia, compounded by the conditions on the Red Planet. Despite the crew's attempts to save her, Sarah dies, leaving her son orphaned and with an unknown father. Back on Earth, after witnessing this tragedy, Nathaniel decides to conceal Gardner's birth from the media, as such a scandal would ruin his company. Bringing the baby to Earth is also not an option, since the difference in atmospheres could be dangerous at his young age. In the end, Gardner remains on Mars, cared for by Kendra and the rest of the astronauts. Still grieving over Sarah's death, Nathaniel takes out his frustration by flying a spacecraft recklessly in the simulator. For him, she wasn't just a crew member. She was also part of his dream of colonization. 16 years later, we see a teenage Gardner growing up in the colony base, where he tends to the hydroponic plants and has fun with his best friend, teacher, and confidant, a robot named Centaur. Gardner even hacks it to access his late mother's personal belongings. There, the boy finds a wedding ring and a USB containing a video of Sarah sharing time at the beach with a man. Seeing him having fun with his mother, Gardner suspects that this man could be his father, and he is determined to find him. But that investigation will have to wait, as he needs to attend a video call from Tulsa, an orphan girl living in a foster home with whom Gardner has formed a friendship. She wants to meet him in real life. Gardner explains that he's supposedly confined to a New York attic because of osteogenesis imperfecta, also known as brittle bones, which he blames on being born in Mars's atmosphere. On another boring day in Mars, Gardner leaves the base to visit his mother's grave. Feeling abandoned and alone, he tries to blow off steam by driving his space rover at top speed, performing reckless stunts to forget the fact that nobody is around him. He flips over and tears his suit, but fortunately, Kendra arrives in time to help him. Of course, he gets a scolding for leaving the base without an escort, a feat he accomplished by growing up in a bubble surrounded by scientists. After all, it would be strange if he weren't extremely smart. To prevent him from repeating this, Kendra tells him that his mother's grave is only symbolic, as her real ashes were sent to Earth. Recognizing that the boy wants a different life, Kendra contacts Nathaniel and Tom Chen, the new director of Genesis, to propose the idea of Gardner traveling to Earth. Nathaniel, though now only the founder, immediately opposes the idea, since they would have to strengthen Gardner's bones and get him used to a new atmosphere. Nonetheless, Kendra arranges a rigorous training program for Gardner, who also undergoes bone surgery. Finally, the day Gardner has been waiting for arrives, and he sets off for Earth. During the voyage, Kendra admits she knows nothing about his father, though she never loses hope that Gardner will discover him someday. Nathaniel, for his part, becomes agitated when he doesn't see Gardner in the Martian base and heads straight to NASA, confirming his worst fears. Sometime later, while orbiting in space, Gardner contemplates the planet where he always should have been. The spacecraft lands on Earth without issue, where NASA personnel receive them. Seeing the landscape full of water and a blue sky, Gardner is awestruck, even though he feels heavier and has trouble walking due to Earth's gravity. Then he's taken to inspection facilities for a full evaluation. There, Nathaniel visits him, eager to hear about his adventures on Mars, while the boy wants to learn more about Earth. Over the following days, Gardner grows restless, since it's more likely he'll be sent back to Mars than allowed to stay. So he escapes his room by blending in among visiting students dressed in an astronaut suit. Then he appears cornered in a dead end. but disguises himself as an employee to slip away unnoticed. This allows him to sneak onto a supply truck, successfully fleeing NASA. Upon reaching the city, Gardner greets everyone he meets, fascinated to discover new people. When it starts to rain, instead of seeking shelter like the others, he stands in the rain, shouting with excitement. After this first contact with earthly life, Gardner boards a bus bound for Colorado, home of Tulsa. Meanwhile, Nathaniel and Kendra continue to search for Gardner. Nathaniel deduces that he's probably on his way to see Tulsa. Finally meeting his friend in real life, Gardner is greeted by a slap from Tulsa, who's furious that he stopped answering her messages for 7 months. He can't explain himself. How do you tell someone you were traveling from Mars? Later during her class, Gardner bursts in unannounced, making the students laugh and embarrassing Tulsa a bit. Then he triggers the emergency shower, and although he ends up completely soaked, his innocence makes everyone smile. After class, Gardner shows Tulsa a photo of his parents, asking her for help in finding his potential father. Back at Tulsa's foster home, Nathaniel and Kendra suddenly appear, demanding Gardner return with them. He refuses and runs toward a nearby field, even though his legs aren't ready for so much exertion. Luckily, Tulsa shows up with an old biplane belonging to her foster guardian. Although Gardner's pursuers are just meters away, he manages to climb into the aircraft. During the flight, Gardner takes in the landscape with fascination, but the excitement doesn't last long, as Tulsa has to make an emergency landing on a highway in the middle of the desert due to lack of fuel. The plane spins out of control, forcing them both to jump out before a disaster happens. Thankfully, the barn they crash into is abandoned. Nathaniel and Kendra, watching from a helicopter, see the explosion and believe Gardner and Tulsa have died in it. A NASA team arrives at the smoking barn but finds no bodies, so they resume their search for the Martian-born boy. In a nearby town, Tulsa pretends to be the owner of a car at a repair shop so she can steal it and continue their journey to find Gardner's father. On the road, Tulsa asks why NASA is after him, and Gardner reveals that he's from Mars. Tulsa slams the brakes, kicking him out of the car, upset that everyone sees her as an easy target. Gardner apologizes, acknowledging that life has treated her poorly, but insists he's telling the truth. With no other choice, Tulsa agrees to continue the trip with her crazy friend. They stop at a restaurant, where they borrow a stranger's tablet while he's in the restroom to browse the internet. Using Sarah's wedding ring, they find the location of a certain Necca, the person who officiated his parents' wedding. Meanwhile, Nathaniel and Kendra receive an alert that Gardner's troponin levels are rising alarmingly. His heart is enlarging because it can't withstand Earth's atmospheric pressure. He must return to Mars immediately. Back to the traveling duo. They stop at a clothing store to change out of their dirty outfits. When Gardner sees Tulsa in a dress, he blushes and tells her she looks beautiful. Continuing on their way, with Gardner now at the wheel, he keeps openly commenting on how beautiful she is. Though she's initially uncomfortable, she eventually warms up to his peculiar charm. That night, after setting up camp, Tulsa plays a romantic song so she and Gardner can dance. Extremely nervous, he musters the courage for his first kiss. They lie down together, Gardner gently touching her and telling her that she's the first person who's made him feel human. The next day, they arrive at the place where the shaman, Necca, lives. He shows them the receipt for Sarah and Nathaniel's marriage, which has an address written on it. Tulsa finds online that the house by the beach in California matches the one where Gardner's parents filmed the video. The shaman's group sends them off with flowers as if they were newlyweds. On the road, Tulsa can't resist stopping in Las Vegas for a fun night, but the bright lights and crowds cause Gardner to collapse. In the hospital, Gardner's x-ray shows his bones have carbon tubes from his surgery, as well as an enlarged heart. This makes Tulsa realize he really is from Mars. Though they're required to keep Gardner under observation, he insists the Earth, despite how much he loves it, is killing him, so he wants to meet his father before that happens. Determined to grant his last wish, Tulsa helps him escape the hospital, and they steal another car to head to California. Nathaniel and Kendra track them down using the same vehicle's location. Despite his worsening condition, Gardner manages to hold on long enough to reach the beach house, where they find the man in Sarah's video. But to Gardner's surprise, this man isn't his father, he's his uncle. Feeling that his journey was pointless, Gardner walks into the ocean, ready to die. while Tulsa desperately tries to rescue him. Nathaniel and Kendra arrive just in time to save him, applying first aid. Once conscious, Gardner asks what his mother was like, and Nathaniel describes her as a fearless, brave woman whom he loved deeply. These words confirm to Gardner that Nathaniel is, in fact, his father, who secretly married his mother. But there's no time for sentimental moments. Gardner falls into a coma. Nathaniel, Kendra, and Tulsa rush him to the Dream Chaser, another spacecraft, hoping that returning him to orbit will stabilize his condition, free of Earth's atmosphere. Since the boy is still unconscious, Nathaniel takes control of the ship and ascends high into the stratosphere, where there is zero gravity. Gardner finally wakes from the coma, concluding he must go back to Mars if he wants to keep living. After a heartfelt goodbye with Tulsa and his adoptive mother, Kendra, Gardner sets off toward the Red Planet, this time with his father. Sometime later, Kendra leaves NASA and decides to adopt Tulsa, recalling her dream of becoming a full-time mother. As for Tulsa, she enrolls in the NASA training program, hoping to become an astronaut and reunite with her favorite Martian one day. Meanwhile, Gardner and his father wait patiently for her in their home on Mars.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.